we had a tech company which was struggling to get a young, Gen Zs or engineers. And
how would you get a Gen X and baby boomer team to really unravel their assumptions about Gen Z and Gen Y, and so that we can all work together? Do you have any practical tools? With around 7 generations being alive together and about 4 generations being active in different workplaces, this is an extremely topical and relevant topic. Namaste and a hearty welcome to this podcast on Unscripted Leadership. This is a podcast series started by Pragati Leadership, where we believe that leadership has the power to unfold capacity of people to transform organizations and to transform all of life. I'm Arun, Wakhlu, the founder director of Pragati Leadership and also the chief mentor. And today we are delighted to be discussing an extremely important topic, which is how can different generations work together to make a difference in organizations and in life. With around 7 generations being alive together and about 4 generations being active in different workplaces, this is an extremely topical and relevant topic. And we couldn't think of a better person to have this podcast with than Mr. Nikhil Raval. Nikhil, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today on this podcast. We're looking forward to a very interesting time. Let me tell you a bit more about Nikhil. So Nikhil is a global thought leader. He's an expert in leadership, an expert in organizational change, and also in the entire piece on Gen Z. He has written 2 books. One is called Target Gen Z, and his most recent book, which is called Generational Fusion. Nikhil is deeply committed to the idea that learning can and should uplift the societies that we serve. His podcast on working with Gen Z is amongst the top 5 in the genre in the world. So Nikhil, welcome. And delighted to have you with us. And incidentally, Nikhil is also a part of the experts of Pragati Leadership. So let me start by asking you, how did you get interested in this topic, Nikhil? Tell us a bit about the story.
Sure. So it's a pleasure to be here, Arun. And, I didn't think I was much of a writer. I had 2 very good mentors in my corporate innings who always forced me to write. And I think with much push, I managed to write a few simple cases. And I found that it's extremely difficult. And I think I did the minimum and I forgot about it. In 2020, however, just before we all experienced COVID, I lost my father. And immediately after that, we all were sort of working from home, and we all know that how the world changed and how the workplace changed and all of that. And so just as we began the journey of COVID of 2 to 3 years, I could see the 2 Gen Z boys at home very, very closely, because schooling was happening from home, learning was happening from home.
Yes.
Everybody was doing everything from home. And I think the motivation to write a book came twofold. One was, of course, to do something in honor of my late parents.
Mm-hmm.
And while I thought about writing, I said, okay, what can I write which could be of some interest to everybody and to me as well? And therefore I said, enough has been written on many, many topics of leadership, but what about the Gen Z generation? And I think the more I looked at, I found out that a fair number of books have been written on that generation. However, most of it was kind of in the Western context, and hardly any books were written from an Asian perspective or an Indian perspective. So I said, let's get into something which will be a learning experience for me as well. And so I did a fair bit of research to understand more. But primarily the book was written, almost in a way where I was looking back my 12, 15 years of leadership consulting work. So that, okay, how do companies bring about young talent, manage them, motivate them, hold on to them, engage them? And so that's how the journey began. And from there, of course, came the podcast, and then came the second book.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Beautiful sentence that caught my attention in your book, the latest one, was that our work is changing, the workforce is changing, and also the workers are changing. And I think that captures beautifully what's happening to us all in this space of leadership. So I just wanted to ask you that given all this diversity of generations working, sometimes 4 generations working together, and everything changing, how do we leverage this diversity and create fusion where today there is friction?
Absolutely. So, Arun, let's say you had to design a Instagram campaign for Pragati. Who would be the first person that would come to your mind? There's a good chance that you're probably thinking about someone in their 20s, thinking that, okay, there's that person,
Yes.
he or she is very tech savvy, and perhaps we should give that person the job. Now, what have you done there, even if that's just a thought process, that consciously you're thinking about one individual, but subconsciously you've made a stereotype, or companies may have made a stereotype to say that, okay, perhaps the more experienced people are not good with technology, or they cannot do it, or they're not interested. Therefore, the first place to start when you think about multi-generations is that how do we help overcome the stereotypes that exist amongst each other about the generations. And then we talk about how do we go about leveraging those differences, right, to your point. So let me give you, I want to talk through, Arun, just 4 very specific approaches that normally I recommend. So the first place to start, where I say that today you have at least 3 very active generations. You've got the Gen Y, the Gen, which is the millennial generation, Gen Z, and of course X. And now in many companies, because people are working longer, you also have the boomer generation. So you've got 4 generations, but for sure 3 generations.
Yes.
Now, the first place that I start is an activity, what I call the assumptions audit. And what it essentially is that it's essentially bringing the team together and asking each person to say, hey, can we think about one assumption I have made about my team member? And let's bring a conversation around that. So, for example, if there is an assumption made that, the experience group is saying that the younger in the team, the younger team members are always sort of glued to the phone. And therefore that's just the observation we have to make. We don't have to kind of conclude because they're glued to the phone. So I think the assumption audit is really a process in which we talk about what are the assumptions I'm making. When we come back in a week's time, we talk to the assumptions, and then we say that, okay, can we think about what could be different? The second step is what I call adjust the lens, which is essentially saying that I know the assumption, but how do I kind of now adjust myself, or the team adjust itself, right? So there we do an activity called describe, interpret, evaluate. So in other words, I have to describe one observation of Arun, or Arun has to describe one observation of somebody in the team. And therefore I just say that, okay, this was the observation I made, and this is sort of my conclusion of what it is. Now, that same person is then asked to think that, can you think about an alternate interpretation of that observation, right? So, for example, one of the clients that we work with is a hospital where we saw that a lot of the doctors who were there were more experienced, and when patients were younger, they were actually kind of on their device when doctors were talking to them. And one of the things that I think they found out when asked the doctors, they were a bit upset, saying that, okay, here I am kind of converse with you. And so we asked the doctors, what do you think could be the alternate sort of evaluation in this situation? And they couldn't think of one. When the younger doctors were told this, they said, look, perhaps that patient who's young is taking notes on a phone. Or perhaps he or she is actually looking at they're actually looking at where is the nearest pharmacy. Yeah. So I think the second on that list is looking at how do we adjust the lens. The third is what I call how do we kind of leverage the differences, right? So there again, we do an activity called the intergenerational roundtable, where we just bring people to say that, okay, let's keep in mind what is our goal as a team, right? What do we want to achieve as a team? and therefore bring in all the views, but always go back to say that what's our end goal? If our end goal is better customer experience, let's keep that in mind, right? And the final thing I would say, Arun, is this concept of mutual mentoring. And I know some companies have done a super job, right? Just when you're onboarding somebody, they have what they call a mentor on demand, right? So let's say I'm working on a very difficult project and I'm stuck and I've got nowhere to go. There are 4 mentors available to me on demand in that project, in that function. And I just say, Arun is my mentor. I click the button and Arun appears to me, or I figure out a way to talk. So the mutual mentoring is really about how do we get each generation to teach and learn. And therefore, what we are saying is that identify what is the strength of each generation. So Arun's got so much knowledge about spirituality. Arun's got so much knowledge about client management. Arun has so much knowledge about managing difficult conversation. That is Arun's expertise. Arun is willing to teach that. Can we make Arun teach that to me? Likewise, if we have a younger colleague in the team, right, can he or she talk about, okay, how do we make really good TikTok videos? How do we run a better LinkedIn campaign? So I think when we do a mutual mentoring process, Arun, that kind of brings more engagement, right? And so in the end, what I conclude by saying that first we identify the stereotypes, we adjust our lens, we talk through a common goal that we have, and then we think about a process where each other contribute, and then hopefully through that we're bringing more fusion than friction.
Beautiful, beautiful. One of the things I love about your book, Generation Fusion, Nikhil, is it has got so many stories. It has beautiful examples of what different companies are doing on various fronts. And also you have generously given so many exercises, so many workbooks, with the QR code, you download this workbook. I just love that. So compliments for being so generous with your learning and teaching. And that echoes what we also believe in at Pragati Leadership. Give the world the best you have, and the best will come back to you. And also, just to summarize what you said, one thing we keep saying in our programs is we're not here to compete with each other. We are here to complete each other.
Yeah.
So that L is about linking, learning, leveraging, loving, just being a whole. I have some skills as a baby boomer. I have some skills that the Gen Z person in my team doesn't have, and she has some skills, like you said, which I don't have. So we all have to work together for a larger goal. So I think one of the things you said is about lenses. We have stereotypes, and you beautifully described that in your book. My question to you, Nikhil, is mindset and stereotypes and biases are very, very difficult to, unravel and to unpack and so on. So how would you get a Gen X and baby boomer team to really unravel their assumptions about Gen Z and Gen Y, and so that we can all work together? Do you have any practical tools?
Yeah, so the 4 that I mentioned are part of that, but you're absolutely, I think when we talk about leaders at all levels, I generally kind of frame the conversation to say that when you are a senior leader, you need to have an outside-in perspective. In other words, be aware of the trends, how AI is disrupting, what the geopolitical situation is happening, the supply chain and so on. And when you're growing from down up, from let's say line level to middle to up, you have to have an inside out, which simply means that can I become more self-aware? And it's strange, and Arun, both you and I know that in many organizations, despite the best of the intentions, the self-awareness is truly just a journey, right? It is a journey where you have to be vested in your own sort of journey to say, yes, I have to improvise. And I'll give you one quick example. We had a large financial services client where they were trying to figure out, they had a household name, one of the top few brands of the country. And why is it that despite this brand that, the competitors are sort of outdoing them? And what they found out is that if you think about the ways in which they were making decisions, so if you think about structured and unstructured on one axis and individual and let's say group on the other axis, everybody, in fact, 24 out of the 25 people always wanted structured information, and they always were making decisions by themselves. which means that they were trying to hire more of who they were.
Right, right,
Yeah. And so I think when they were taking a very key decision, should we go umbrella branding? Should we go house of brands? What should it be? They were looking everything from one lens. And so the CEO, when they were sort of trying to ask, hey, what's your view? There was no disagreement, and therefore I think the first step when you think about this whole breaking the stereotypes is that, and there are many biases, right? I think the number one, I only talk about one here because I think we all have been guilty of that, is what we call the confirmation bias. So I simply look for data which is going to confirm my belief, right? So if I sense that, okay, this is how a Gen Z is going to be, he or she is not productive, they always want to be on a phone, I will look for data, right? And I think managers especially, I just say that, can we think about ways in which we overcome that, right? So what's the way to overcome that? Well, you deliberately, consciously look for the alternative, which means if I'm a young person, I have to invite all the experienced people to come in and contribute. Say, Arun, what do you think? Or if Arun is leading a conversation, Arun will talk about, three other colleagues from the team said that, even if the view, you may not agree in the end, but the point is, how do we do that? And I think it's a journey. And what we did for one of the clients here, Arun, was that we gave them what we call a decision diary. So in other words, every time a key decision had to be taken in an intergenerational team, they had to write a key decision, what's the end outcome, and what was the process that they used. And very finally, they found out that over a period of 9 months, they were defaulting to the same biases, group biases, confirmation biases, sunk cost biases. And so some of these biases, I think the first journey is to be self-aware, and then you got to practice, right? It's like a muscle. The more you can be aware, the more you can practice.
Flex your mindset, try out different lenses, different approaches. Wonderful. And we found that mindfulness helps here. When you get back from your mind, look at your mind from a distance, from a space of silence and peace and awareness, I think that helps you to flex, because you're not invested in an ego that's stuck to a certain lens. You say, hey, these are all lenses, but I am pure consciousness, pure awareness. That makes it a lot easier. Now, one of the things I've heard and I've observed about Gen Z and younger people is that they're a lot more purpose oriented. They're a lot more interested in the context of things. And of course, they have a great preference for purpose, for flexibility, and for impact. So my question to you is, how can the legacy organizations reinvent themselves to take care of this preference for purpose, flexibility, and impact that is displayed by Gen Z? In fact, one thing I want to say is that, today they say meaning is becoming the new money. People are more interested in the deeper why. I mean, sometimes Gen Z might even ask you, what are the values of your company? What's your CSR budget? And things like that. So how do legacy organizations reinvent themselves?
No, absolutely. So Arun, I'll just say a quick short story first. I remember when I went to buy this iPhone, my son was accompanying me, and to me, I was very indifferent what color. In fact, I leaned on him to say what model, and he explained to me all the features. And in the end, when we were about to purchase it, he says, look, as long as you're buying, can I suggest you buy a pink color phone? And I said, sure. I said, but why are you saying it's pink color? And so he said, simply because every time you purchase a pink color phone, Apple takes parts of the proceeds and gives it to a charity. And he says that if you're spending 50 grand, you might as well do something good on the side, right? And so you're absolutely right. I think this generation, perhaps more than others, where are really passionate about what they're kind of contributing their work life to. And post-COVID, all of us are rethinking that now.
A lot more, yes.
And I will suggest 4 or 5 sort of ways in which companies can look at this. Number one, can you redefine yourself as a purpose-led organization? So, for example, there's a company called Schneider Electric.
Yes.
And Schneider Electric is an old classic kind of a electricity company. But how about if they said that they are a climate tech company, and they've actually done that, just so every young person coming into the system is saying that, okay, well, we're kind of doing something to help sustainability, right? And there's a way for them to feel that we're part of something bigger rather than just coming to work for an energy company. Second is, I think you want to create a more, employer-friendly branding or modern branding, right? So I'll give you a story, Arun. We had a tech company which was struggling to get a young, Gen Zs or engineers, and so at some point they said that okay, we will go to Gen Zs themselves to find out what is required. And they said that, well, you're doing everything wrong, right? No Gen Z today has the bandwidth, the attention span to read a website and fill out a long form. So what they ended up doing is that the senior leaders of this company, the top 40 leaders of this company, created TikTok videos,
Oh,
2 minute TikTok videos
oh,
indicating why they should come work for that company.
excellent.
Furthermore, they said that, okay, if I'm posted in Pune, what can I do on a weekend in a Pune? Where can I go to eat, right? So they created these videos which said that, okay, if you work for our company in Pune, these are the hangout places, right? And then they created an app which basically says that, look, we want you, but it's quick. It'll take no more than 3 minutes to fill it out, and there you go. So first, can you make a purpose-oriented branding? Can you modernize your branding? And third, as we know from our work, that Daniel Pink, who is
Yes,
written
and
about
big.
right? Daniel Pink talks about if you've got all the sort of explicit factors of a job, right? The salary, the title, the location, the benefits, right? That's one part of it. But in the end, what motivates someone? And there we talk about the AMPS, or the autonomy, mastery, purpose, and safety,
Purpose.
right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. I remember
So the,
that.
the autonomy to me is a double-edged sword. A lot of times people say, hey, how can I let go when the person is not skilled? But I do think that's where the manager also needs to figure out how they can grow, to say, when can I let go? Can I let go sufficiently so that they're growing and the manager himself is growing? So I think autonomy is very important. We've seen, Arun, you've seen in your illustrious career, right? How many times have we heard stories where the company is paying someone so well, but if they have no decision-making power,
Correct.
how long are you going to sustain that?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and in today's workforce, the young person is going to quickly walk away. It doesn't matter what's the size of the
Very,
paycheck.
very true.
Yeah,
And I think if there's one lesson that people have to really learn is there should be power with young people, not power over. Because one thing they detest is this hierarchical bossism and all that kind of stuff. But if there's inclusion, if there is a space for self-organizing, autonomy, they are absolutely marvelous. And
yeah,
that brings me to the last question for today, which is linked to the policies of HR. What can HR do on two fronts? Number one is how can they make the organization more inclusive for such people, and what can they do about career progressions? Could you just talk about these two things, Nikhil?
sure. So you're correct. How do you cater to a workforce which is increasingly becoming diverse in their
Yes,
preferences
yes.
and so on? And I'd say there are three or four some basic things, when you think about sort of as a structure. One is, of course, you want to be open and listen to as many of those
Right.
segments that exist, demographic that exists, remembering that one size doesn't fit all. I think where the trend is going, Arun, is that companies are now designing what is relevant as per the stage of the life of the employee. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, there are companies which kind of have designed something what says that, okay, you pick the perk that you feel is relevant to you,
Beautiful,
which
beautiful.
means that if I'm a Gen Z, perhaps I've just bought, a two-bedroom apartment, and therefore I have an EMI. So maybe there's a loan repayment kind of a program that's there. If I'm a Gen Xer or a boomer, I'm probably thinking about ways to invest more for my retirement, or I'm thinking about how do I get senior care help in Western countries and so on, right? So I think one is, of course, to figure out how do we give benefits which are customized.
Correct.
Number two, as you spoke about the workplace changing, how can we become as flexible as our client work and our customers can allow?
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, to accommodate that, right? And I'll tell you a story, Arun. This is way back, almost 25 years ago when I was in the US. I used to work for a brokerage company, and we experimented with a concept called 980. Essentially, what it is that you finish 80 hours instead of the normal 10 days, the 5 plus 5, you
Hmm.
finish it in 9 days. And so you get the 10th day off. So
Oh,
every other weekend is a long weekend.
oh,
And would you believe that the moment they did that, the productivity just went up the roof, right? Everybody was so keen to finish everything that they wanted. Thursday evening, you're done and you got a long weekend. So I think, where do we go? What's the best thing? Should we do 5+0? Do we do 2+3, 4+1? And how do we help accommodate their situation? And it's not easy. So some companies have taken the view that if you're client facing, 100% in the office, if you can support, you can do it remotely. That's one. Third is, of course, customizing the ways in which you can learn, right? So the elder generation perhaps have more traditional way of leadership, that they want to go to a class, they want to go to an AMP, they want to go somewhere. But the Gen Z is saying, hey, let the AI even tell me what should I learn, right? And you got a digital path created for them. So they pick the learning, they pick the place, they pick the medium, and so on, right? And being transparent. Right. So I think these are some just very quickly, some things that companies can keep in mind when you think about, the benefits, the perks, and so on. And when you talk about career, similar things, right? I think we're seeing that long gone are the days where you have the traditional career. I mean, you have the traditional career. Where I joined in the sales and I remain in sales for 40 years, right? More and more companies are going towards creating experiences, career lattices. Walmart, incidentally, just to give you an example, as something where they actually build their employees on skill-based jobs. So if you go into the Walmart system, doesn't matter if you like something, do you have the skills for that? So they just help you to say that, okay, I want to learn a little bit about, let's say, engineering. Okay, go take these 5 courses and go take that job, right? So that's where the trend is going, where you do more skill-based. And I think increasingly, where we have more and more people working longer, so the X and the boomer generation, right? How do we help them if you think about their runway? So there are companies who are, Pfizer is running a program called the senior intern. There are companies who are hiring people at the age of 50 and so on, and giving them flexible work schedules. So at the end of the day, how you bring up learning, the communication, some of these things, the more closely you're sort of having your ears and eyes to the ground, to your customer, which is the employee, I think you can make good success.
Wonderful. Very, very nice. And I love the examples you're giving. And I think, as I was listening to you, I was just imagining that a world that is served by AI, where we ride the dragon of AI, we use it to help craft and design our learning experiences, our career experiences. And of course, underscale it, undergird it with clarity about purpose, clarity about prosperity, people, and the planet. And I loved what you said, involve young people, make it inclusive, get everybody onto the table and listen, listen, listen. Incidentally, the word listen anagrams to silent. And Nikhil, one of the things I love doing, whether it's young people or elderly people or whoever, is, hey, let's sit together in a circle and just be silent. Let the universal intelligence that runs all of life, let it inform us, guide us, bring us home to love and wholeness, and so that we can work together for the benefit of all. So Nikhil, it's been an absolute pleasure to have listened to you, a very meaningful conversation. I learned a lot, and I'm going to dive into your book more and download those workbooks and other things, because at Pragati Leadership, as you're aware, we believe that together we bring and make a whole. When we converse, when we connect, when we co-create, the whole is always greater than the parts. Thanks once again. I love this conversation. Have a great day and all the best, Nikhil.
Thank you, Arun, and have a good one.